The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber slid open with a soft hiss, and Ambassador Jake Morrison stepped inside with measured confidence. The enormous circular room stretched before him, its walls lined with viewing ports that showed the stars beyond. 12 different species sat in their designated sections, each area designed to accommodate their unique physiologies and environmental needs. Jake had been walking these halls for 3 years now, but the sight still impressed him. The crystalline Etherians glowed softly in their energy-based seats, their forms shifting between solid and translucent as they communicated through light patterns. The reptilian saurians lounged on heated stone platforms, their scales catching the artificial sunlight that beamed down from above. The mushroom-like sporians clustered together in their soil-filled section, releasing gentle clouds of spores that carried their thoughts to one another. Today's session was routine, just another quarterly review of the human integration process. Jake straightened his dark blue diplomatic uniform and walked to the center of the chamber where a simple podium waited for him. The humans had specifically requested something plain and functional. Unlike the elaborate speaking platforms used by other species, Council Leader Zix441 rose from the Etherian section, its crystalline form pulsing with warm yellow light. Ambassador Morrison, please take your position. We are ready to begin the quarterly assessment. Jake nodded and stepped up to the podium. Around him, the various alien species settled into their listening positions. The insectoid hive minds arranged themselves in perfect geometric patterns, their compound eyes reflecting the chamber's lights. The gaseous Vortexians swirled in their containment fields, their thoughts creating visible patterns in their cloudy forms. Thank you, Council Leader, Jake began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's translation system. It is an honor to address the Council once again. Saruk of the Saurian Empire leaned forward on his heated platform, his golden eyes studying Jake with what appeared to be genuine interest. Ambassador Morrison, your species continues to impress us with your adaptability. In just 3 years, humans have integrated into our community faster than any species in recorded history. Jake smiled, the expression coming naturally after years of practice. We appreciate the patience you've shown us, Delegate Saruk. Learning to work with 12 different species has been challenging, but incredibly rewarding. The Sporian delegate, whose name translated roughly to root speaker, released a small puff of blue spores. The translation system converted the chemical message into words. Your people have embraced our cultural exchange programs with remarkable enthusiasm. We have never seen such willingness to adapt and learn. Cooperation has always been important to our species, Jake replied. We believe that working together achieves more than working alone. This statement caused a ripple of approval throughout the chamber. The Etherians pulsed with satisfied light, while the hive minds clicked in harmonic agreement. Even the usually reserved crystalline collective hummed with positive energy. Council Leader Zix441 gestured with flowing tentacles of light. Indeed, Ambassador Morrison, your species has proven most accommodating. When we first encountered humanity, we were prepared for the usual challenges. Most species require decades to fully integrate if they manage it at all. The Vortexian delegate's gaseous form swirled with curiosity. The warlike Korthans took 50 years to accept our peaceful protocols. The isolationist Vex still maintains separate facilities for most activities, even after a century of membership. But humans, added the melodic voice of the singing crystal's representative, have embraced every treaty, every cultural exchange, every technological sharing agreement with remarkable enthusiasm. Jake nodded thoughtfully. We've learned much from each of your civilizations. The Etherian energy manipulation techniques have revolutionized our power systems. Sporian biological sciences have helped us understand life in ways we never imagined. Saurian military tactics have improved our defensive capabilities. Ah, yes, your military, Saruk interjected, his reptilian features showing what might have been amusement. Most refreshing, actually. Your people have been completely transparent about your defensive capabilities. No hidden weapons, no secret military installations, no classified technologies kept from the Council. The hive mind representative spoke, In unison, their voices creating an eerie harmony. We have reviewed your weapons technology submissions. They are adequate for your development level, though quite primitive compared to Council standards. We've always believed in transparency, Jake said, his hands clasped behind his back. Secrets only lead to mistrust, and mistrust leads to conflict. The chamber buzzed with approval. The various species had dealt with too many civilizations that concealed their true military strength, who smiled and cooperated while secretly preparing for war. Humanity's openness was a welcome change. Your industrial capacity reports have been equally forthcoming, noted the Etherian economic specialist, Zix 337. Your manufacturing capabilities are impressive for a single-planet species, though obviously limited compared to our multi-system operations. We're still learning, Jake replied humbly. The Council's guidance has been invaluable in helping us understand how to scale our operations for galactic commerce. The Sporian delegate pulsed with pleased orange spores. Your trade proposals have been reasonable and fair. No attempts to monopolize resources or establish unfair advantages. Very different from the usual newcomer behavior. Competition has its place, Jake said, but cooperation builds stronger foundations for everyone. Council Leader Zix 441's form brightened with satisfaction. This is exactly what we hoped to hear, Ambassador Morrison. Your species has proven that peaceful integration is possible, even for relatively young civilizations. The Crystalline Collective's representative chimed in with musical tones. Your scientists have shared their research freely, your artists have contributed to our cultural archives, and your diplomats have shown genuine interest in maintaining harmony. We've also appreciated your planet's openness to Council observers, added the Vortexian delegate. Most species restrict access to their homeworlds for decades after first contact. But Earth has welcomed our cultural exchange teams, our scientific survey missions, and our economic assessment groups. Jake spread his hands in a gesture of openness. We have nothing to hide. Earth is our home, and we're proud to share it with our new friends. The chamber filled with the various sounds of alien approval. The Etherians pulsed with warm light, the Sporians released clouds of happy spores, and the hive minds clicked in perfect synchronization. It is rare to encounter a species so committed to peaceful cooperation, Council Leader Zix 441 observed. Most civilizations arrive with hidden agendas, secret plans, or conquest ambitions thinly disguised as diplomacy. Humanity seeks only friendship and mutual benefit, Jake replied smoothly. We've learned from our own history that conflict brings only suffering. We much prefer the path of cooperation. As the session continued, Jake answered questions about human colonial expansion, which was limited and carefully planned in consultation with the Council. He discussed human technological development, which followed approved guidelines and shared all major breakthroughs with member species. He outlined human cultural initiatives, which focused on learning from and contributing to the galactic community. Through it all, Jake maintained his friendly, cooperative demeanor. He was the perfect ambassador for a species that had apparently learned from its violent past and chosen a better path forward. But as the session drew to a close, something flickered in Jake's eyes. Just for a moment, when he thought no one was watching, his expression changed. The smile remained, but something else appeared beneath it. Something calculating, something that suggested depths the Council had never suspected. The moment passed quickly, and Jake's diplomatic mask returned. None of the alien delegates noticed the brief change, too pleased with humanity's continued cooperation to look for hidden meanings. As the chamber began to empty, Jake remained at his podium, reviewing his notes. To any observer, he appeared to be a conscientious diplomat making sure he had covered all the important points. In reality, he was mentally reviewing a very different set of notes, plans and preparations that no Council member had ever seen. Information that would change everything if it ever came to light, but that was for another day. Today, humanity remained the cooperative junior partner that the Council had come to appreciate and trust. Jake Morrison gathered his materials and headed for the exit, already planning his next report to Earth, the report that would go to very different people than the Council imagined. Dr. Lisa Carter walked through the gleaming corridors of the Etherian Research Facility, her footsteps echoing softly against the crystalline walls. The building itself was a marvel of alien engineering, grown rather than built, with walls that shifted between transparency and opacity based on the occupants' needs. Soft blue light emanated from the structure itself, providing illumination without any visible source. Lisa had been working here for 8 months now as part of the cultural exchange program. Her official title was human xenobiologist, but her real job was much more complex. She studied the Etherians while they studied her, each side learning about the other's biology, psychology, and social structures. Her Etherian counterpart, X992, materialized beside her as she entered the main laboratory. The being's crystalline form sparkled with greeting patterns, and the translation device on Lisa's collar converted the light signals into words. "Dr. Carter, I trust your rest period was satisfactory," ZYX992 said through the translator. "I have prepared today's research materials for our review." Lisa smiled and nodded. "Thank you, ZX992. I'm looking forward to seeing what you've discovered." The Etherian's form pulsed with what Lisa had learned was curiosity. "Before we begin, I have some questions about your species' social development. I have been reviewing the historical records you provided, and I find certain aspects puzzling." Lisa felt a small warning signal in her mind, but kept her expression neutral. "I'm happy to help clarify anything that seems confusing." ZX992 gestured toward a holographic display that showed various human historical events. "Your species presents itself as naturally cooperative, yet your past appears filled with conflict. How do you reconcile this apparent contradiction?" The hologram showed images of ancient battles, medieval warfare, and more recent conflicts. Lisa had expected this question eventually. The Etherians were naturally curious beings, and their analytical minds would eventually notice the discrepancy. "Every species has a past," Lisa replied carefully. "We've evolved beyond those primitive instincts. The establishment of the United Earth Government in 2157 marked our transition to a truly cooperative species." The Etherian's form shimmered with continued interest. "Yes, but the records show conflicts as recent as 50 years ago. The resource wars of 2203, the corporate rebellions of 2215, the Antarctic incident of 2221. These events seem quite intense for a species that claims natural cooperation." Lisa maintained her composed demeanor while her mind raced. She had hoped the aliens would focus on humanity's recent peaceful period rather than dig into the more troubling recent history. "Growing pains," she said with a slight smile. "We learn from those mistakes. That's exactly why we value the Council's guidance so highly." "Growing pains," ZX992 repeated, the translator giving the phrase a questioning tone. "Yet these conflicts involved advanced weapons, complex strategies, and significant casualties. The Antarctic incident alone resulted in the complete destruction of 3 cities." "It was a difficult time," Lisa acknowledged, "but it taught us the importance of working together instead of fighting each other. We realized that cooperation was the only path to survival." The Etherian's form pulsed with what Lisa recognized as thoughtful consideration. "I see, and this realization came suddenly?" "The transition from widespread conflict to peaceful cooperation happened in just a few decades?" Lisa nodded. "Sometimes it takes a crisis to show people the right path. The Antarctic incident was our wake-up call. We saw what continued conflict would lead to, and we chose a better way." "Fascinating," ZX992 said, though something in the light patterns suggested the being was not entirely satisfied with the explanation. "And your military capabilities? The records show highly advanced weapon systems, but your current submissions to the Council show much more limited technology." This was dangerous territory. Lisa chose her words carefully. "We dismantled most of our weapons after the unification. We kept only what was necessary for basic defense. The Council's protection makes extensive military capabilities unnecessary." Course? ZX992 agreed. But Lisa noticed the being's form flickering in patterns she had never seen before. Well, shall we proceed with today's biological research? Lisa nodded, relieved to change the subject. They spent the next several hours examining Etherian cellular structures and comparing them to human biology. The work was genuinely fascinating, and Lisa found herself absorbed in the scientific discoveries. But as the day ended and Lisa prepared to return to her quarters, ZYX992 made an unexpected request. Dr. Carter, would it be possible for me to access some of the restricted human historical databases? I am particularly interested in your species' technological development patterns. Lisa felt her heart skip a beat but kept her voice steady. I'm afraid I don't have access to restricted databases. My clearance only covers the materials that were provided for the cultural exchange program. I understand, ZYX992 said, but perhaps you could request access from your superiors? I find human development patterns quite intriguing from a scientific perspective. I'll see what I can do, Lisa replied, though she had no intention of making such a request. Is there anything specific you're looking for? The Etherian's form pulsed with what might have been excitement. I am particularly interested in the period between 2200 and 2250. The technological advances during that time seem remarkably rapid, even accounting for the pressure of warfare. Lisa nodded noncommittally. I'll mention your interest in my next report. That evening, Lisa returned to her quarters in the human section of the research facility. The rooms were designed to accommodate human needs, with familiar furniture and Earth-standard atmosphere. She sat at her desk and activated her secure communication system. Evening report, Dr. Carter, she said to the encrypted recorder. ZYX992 is showing increased interest in our historical records, particularly our military development during the Resource Wars period. The being seems suspicious of our claimed transition from conflict to cooperation. She paused, considering her next words carefully. I've deflected the questions for now, but I suspect ZYX992 will continue investigating. The Etherians have significant computational abilities, and if they decide to seriously analyze our provided data, they may discover inconsistencies. Lisa looked out her window at the alien landscape beyond. The Etherian homeworld was beautiful in its own way, with crystal formations that caught and reflected light in mesmerizing patterns. But she was beginning to feel like she was walking on very thin ice. The being specifically asked about accessing restricted databases, she continued. I declined, but I suspect this won't be the end of it. Recommendation: we may need to consider contingency protocols if the investigation continues. After ending her report, Lisa sat in her chair and thought about the conversation. ZYX992 was intelligent, perhaps more so than the humans had initially realized. The Etherian's questions showed a level of analytical thinking that could prove problematic if directed toward the wrong areas. Lisa opened her personal files and reviewed the official human historical records that had been provided to the Council. On the surface, they told a story of gradual evolution from conflict to cooperation. But anyone with sufficient analytical skills and access to the right resources might start to notice gaps in the timeline, inconsistencies in the technological development, and suspicious omissions in the military records. The real question was how much the Etherians could discover with their current access levels. Lisa knew that the restricted databases contained information that would completely change the aliens' perception of humanity. Information about programs and preparations that went far beyond simple defensive measures. She made a mental note to be more careful in future conversations with ZYX992. The being's curiosity was natural and understandable, but it could lead to discoveries that would complicate everything the humans had worked to achieve. As she prepared for sleep, Lisa wondered if other human researchers were facing similar questions from their alien colleagues. The cultural exchange program had placed humans throughout the galaxy, all of them maintaining the same careful balance between cooperation and concealment. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, and Lisa would need to continue walking the tightrope between satisfying alien curiosity and protecting human secrets. The mission was too important to risk. and the consequences of discovery were too severe to contemplate. But as she drifted off to sleep, Lisa couldn't shake the feeling that Zix992's questions were just the beginning. The Etherean's analytical mind was clearly working on the puzzle of human history, and Lisa feared it was only a matter of time before the being started looking in places that humans would prefer to keep hidden. The next day would bring new tests of her ability to maintain the careful deception that had served humanity so well. But for now, she could only hope that their preparations had been thorough enough to withstand even the most determined investigation. The emergency communication reached Council Leader Zix441 during the deep night cycle of the Etherean homeworld. The crystalline being's form flickered with alarm as it received the urgent message from ZYX992 at the research facility. Within moments, emergency signals were being transmitted across the galaxy to the other council members. By the time the emergency session convened, representatives from all 12 species had gathered in the council chamber. The usual diplomatic ceremonies were abandoned as Zix992 materialized at the center of the room, its crystalline form pulsing with agitation and urgency. "Fellow council members," Zix992 began, its voice carrying through the translation systems with unusual intensity, "I have made a discovery that threatens the very foundation of our relationship with the humans." Sark of the Saurian Empire hissed with skepticism, his golden eyes narrowing. "Impossible. The humans have been nothing but cooperative since their arrival. They have shown no signs of deception or hostile intent." The Sporian delegate released a cloud of confused purple. "Spores. What could you have possibly discovered that would warrant an emergency session? The humans have been exemplary members of our community." ZYX992's form brightened with grim determination. "That is exactly what they wanted us to believe. I have been investigating inconsistencies in their historical records, and what I discovered has shaken my understanding of their entire species." The hive mind representatives began rapid clicking among themselves, their collective consciousness processing the implications. The Vortexian delegate's gaseous form swirled with concern. "Explain yourself," Council Leader Zix441 commanded, its own form flickering with worry. ZX-992 gestured, and a holographic display appeared above the chamber. 3 days ago, I requested access to restricted human historical databases. Dr. Carter declined, claiming she lacked authorization. This response seemed unusual for a species that claims complete transparency. The display showed various data streams and file structures. Using my computational abilities, I began analyzing the databases that were provided to us during the integration process. What I found were gaps, inconsistencies, and encrypted sections that had been carefully hidden. The crystalline collective's representative chimed with musical concern. "What type of inconsistencies?" "Time gaps in their military development records," Zix992 replied. "Technological advances that appeared overnight with no development history. Research projects that were referenced but never explained. And most troubling of all, repeated references to something called contingency plans." The chamber fell silent. The various alien species had dealt with deceptive civilizations before, but the humans had seemed so genuinely cooperative that the possibility of deception had never occurred to them. After 2 days of analysis, I managed to break through several encryption layers. Zix992 continued. "What I discovered was a series of detailed military and strategic documents that paint a very different picture of human intentions." The holographic display changed, showing file names and partial document contents. "Operation Starfall, a comprehensive plan for disabling energy-based civilizations using electromagnetic pulse weapons, specifically designed to target Etherean technology. The plan includes detailed specifications for weapons we were never told existed." The Etherean delegates pulsed with shocked light patterns. Their entire civilization depended on energy manipulation, and the idea that the humans had secretly developed weapons to counter their abilities was terrifying. "Project Mindbridge," Zix992 continued, "a psychological warfare campaign targeting the hive mind species." The documents describe methods for disrupting collective consciousness and breaking mental links between individuals. The hive mind representatives' clicking became rapid and distressed. The possibility of forced separation from their collective was their species' greatest fear. Protocol Deeproot, a biological agent specifically designed to target Sporian neural networks. The research appears to have been ongoing for the entire 3 years of their membership in the Council. The Sporian delegate released a massive cloud of alarmed red spores, filling their section of the chamber with the chemical equivalent of panic. There are similar plans for every species represented in this chamber, Zix 992 said, its form now pulsing with barely controlled fear. Detailed invasion strategies, resource allocation plans, and post-conquest administration protocols. The Vortexian delegate's gaseous form began spinning rapidly. How is this possible? We have monitored their military capabilities. Their weapons technology is primitive compared to ours. That appears to have been another deception, ZYX 992 replied grimly. The military assessments they provided show only obsolete or deliberately weakened systems. References in these documents suggest they possess far more advanced capabilities than they have revealed. Council Leader Zix 441 struggled to process the implications. Are you certain of these findings? The evidence is conclusive? I have verified the authenticity of the documents through multiple analytical methods, Zix 992 confirmed. The encryption signatures match human technological patterns. The linguistic structures are consistent with their communication methods, and the technical specifications align with gaps in their reported research. The singing crystal's representative produced a harmony of distressed notes. But why would they maintain such elaborate deceptions? What could they hope to gain? Complete intelligence on every major civilization in the galaxy, Zix 992 answered. For 3 years, they have been studying our technologies, our weaknesses, our military capabilities, and our resource locations. They have positioned themselves perfectly for a coordinated attack on the entire Council. The revelation sent shockwaves through the chamber. The species that had seemed so eager to learn and cooperate had apparently been gathering intelligence for a massive conquest operation. Their cultural exchange programs, the Etherean continued, were not about cooperation. They were reconnaissance missions. Every human scientist, diplomat, and researcher has been gathering data about our civilizations. Sarek rose from his heated platform, his reptilian features twisted with rage. They have been studying us like prey animals, learning our habits and weaknesses while pretending friendship. The chamber erupted in chaos as the various species began communicating with their homeworlds, warning of the potential threat. The Sporians released clouds of alarm spores, the hive minds clicked frantically, and the Vortexians spun in agitated patterns. There is more, Zix 992 said, somehow managing to be heard above the chaos. The documents reference something called Phase 2 implementation, scheduled to begin within the next standard year. The chamber fell silent again as the implications sank in. Whatever the humans were planning, it was not a distant future threat, it was imminent. We must confront them immediately, declared the Crystalline Collective's representative. If they are planning aggression, we need to understand the full scope of their intentions. But carefully, warned the Vortexian delegate. If they have been deceiving us this thoroughly, we cannot predict how they will react to discovery. Council Leader. Zix 441 pulsed with determined light. We will summon Ambassador Morrison for an emergency session. We will present him with this evidence and demand explanations. And if he continues to lie? Asked Sarek, his claws extending slightly. Then we will know that humanity represents a clear and present danger to every member of the Council, Zix 441 replied. And we will respond accordingly. The chamber buzzed with tense energy as the various species contemplated the situation. The humans had seemed like such perfect allies, cooperative and eager to learn. The discovery that this had all been an elaborate deception was shocking enough, but the realization that they might be facing a coordinated attack was terrifying. I recommend we place all human personnel under discreet observation, suggested the hive mind representative. If they are intelligence gatherers, their behavior may change once they realize we are suspicious. Agreed, said Council Leader Zix 441. But we must be subtle. If they suspect we have discovered their plans, they may accelerate their timeline. As the emergency session continued, the aliens began to realize how completely they had been outmaneuvered. The species they had welcomed as junior partners had been playing a much more sophisticated game than anyone had imagined. The question now was whether the Council could respond effectively to a threat they had never seen coming from allies they had trusted completely. The next few hours would determine whether the revelation of human deception would lead to explanations and reconciliation, or to the first galactic war in over 1,000 years. Ambassador Jake Morrison received the emergency summons while reviewing reports in his quarters. The message was terse and formal, lacking the usual diplomatic pleasantries that characterized Council communications. He read it twice, noting the unusual urgency and the specific request that he attend immediately without any staff members. Jake set down his tablet and walked to his mirror, adjusting his diplomatic uniform with practiced precision. His reflection showed a calm, professional diplomat, but his eyes held a sharpness that had been carefully hidden from alien observers for 3 years. He had been expecting this moment, though perhaps not quite this soon. The walk to the Council chamber felt longer than usual. The corridors seemed emptier, and Jake noticed that several alien personnel who normally greeted him with friendly gestures now avoided eye contact. The signs were subtle but unmistakable to someone trained to read such indicators. When the massive chamber doors opened, Jake immediately understood the situation. All 12 species were present, their postures unmistakably hostile. The usual seating arrangements had been altered, with the alien delegates forming a semicircle that created an intimidating wall of varied physiologies. The air itself felt charged with tension and barely controlled anger. Jake walked to the center of the chamber with steady steps, his hands clasped behind his back in his customary diplomatic pose. He had practiced this moment in simulations dozens of times, though he had hoped it would never be necessary. Council Leader Zix 441 rose from the Etherian section, its crystalline form pulsing with cold light rather than the usual warm glow. Ambassador Morrison, we have summoned you here to address a matter of extreme importance and concern. I am at the Council's service, Jake replied calmly, though he could sense the hostility radiating from every section of the chamber. COX-992 materialized beside the Council Leader, its form flickering with what Jake recognized as barely controlled fury. Ambassador, we have discovered something that calls into question everything we believed about your species and your intentions. Jake maintained his composed expression, though internally he was calculating probabilities and response scenarios. I'm concerned to hear that Zix 992. Perhaps you could elaborate on the nature of this issue. The holographic display system activated, filling the space above the chamber with file names and document excerpts. Jake's eyes scanned the information, noting exactly which files had been accessed and how much the aliens had discovered. We have found your contingency plans, Zix 441 said, its voice carrying through the chamber like an accusation. Operation Starfall, Project Mindbridge, Protocol Deeproot. Should we continue listing them, Ambassador? The chamber fell silent as every alien delegate waited for Jake's response. Some leaned forward in anticipation, others drew back as if preparing for attack. The tension was so thick it seemed to have physical weight. Jake looked around the chamber, meeting the gaze of each delegate in turn. His expression remained perfectly calm, showing no surprise, no guilt, no defensive reaction. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady and clear. I see you've been doing your homework, he said simply. Yes, the contingency plans exist. Every single one of them. The admission hit the chamber like a physical blow. Several delegates began transmitting emergency signals to their homeworlds. The Sporian representative released a massive cloud of alarmed spores. While the hive mind's clicking became rapid and agitated, Sarek of the Saurian Empire rose from his heated platform, his claws extending and his golden eyes blazing with rage. You dare to confirm your treachery? We welcomed you as partners, as friends, and you planned our conquest the entire time? Jake held up one hand in a calming gesture, though his demeanor remained completely untroubled. I think there's been a fundamental misunderstanding here. You've discovered our contingency plans for hostile scenarios, yes. But you seem to assume these are our primary intentions. The Vortexian delegate's gaseous form swirled with confusion. What other interpretation could there be? You have detailed invasion plans for every species in this chamber. We do indeed, Jake confirmed, his tone matter-of-fact. But those are just the plans for if you turn out to be enemies? Perhaps you'd like to hear about the contingency plans we have for if you remain friends. The statement created a moment of stunned silence. The aliens had been prepared for denials, for explanations, for desperate attempts to justify the deception. They had not been prepared for calm acknowledgement followed by an even more unsettling revelation. Council, Leader Zix 441 found its voice first. What do you mean, Ambassador Morrison? Jake's expression shifted slightly, his diplomatic smile becoming something sharper and more predatory. Did you really think a species that conquered its own planet, survived multiple extinction events, and built an interstellar civilization in less than 3 centuries would enter a galactic community without comprehensive preparations? He began to pace in the center of the chamber, his casual movement somehow more unsettling than any aggressive posture could have been. You see, the human approach to cooperation is quite different from yours. We don't cooperate because we're naturally peaceful or because we lack other options. We cooperate because it's usually the most efficient path to our goals. The chamber remained silent, but Jake could sense the growing unease among the delegates. They were beginning to realize that they had fundamentally misunderstood their newest members. But we always have alternatives, Jake continued. The contingency plans you discovered represent just one possible future. We have equally detailed plans for peaceful cooperation, mutual development, and shared prosperity. The Crystalline Collective's representative produced a discordant chime. You planned for war and peace simultaneously? We planned for everything. Jake replied simply, that's what humans do. We hope for the best cooperation this galaxy has ever seen, but we prepare for the worst conflict it's ever experienced. The chamber's main doors opened and Dr. Lisa Carter entered, followed by a man in military uniform that none of the aliens had seen before. Jake gestured toward them as they approached. I'd like you to meet General Roy Patterson, our military liaison, who has been notably absent from most council meetings. His presence here tonight should tell you something about the seriousness of this conversation. General Patterson stepped forward, his bearing unmistakably military despite his diplomatic credentials. What Ambassador Morrison is trying to explain is that we've been preparing for 3 years. Every contingency, every possibility, every potential outcome. Lisa Carter moved to stand beside Jake, her previous demeanor of eager cooperation replaced by cool professionalism. The cultural exchange programs weren't just about learning your customs and technologies. We've been conducting comprehensive assessments of every aspect of your civilizations. Military capabilities, resource distributions, political structures, trade relationships, historical conflicts, natural allies, traditional enemies, General Patterson listed methodically. We know more about each of your species than you know about each other. The implications began to sink in among the alien delegates. The humans hadn't just been gathering intelligence for potential invasion. They had been creating comprehensive models of galactic civilization that would allow them to predict and influence outcomes regardless of which scenario unfolded. The question now, Jake said, his voice carrying clearly through the stunned silence, is what happens next. We've shown you that we're prepared for hostility, but we're equally prepared for continued friendship and cooperation. He looked around the chamber, meeting each delegate's gaze again. The choice, as it always has been, is entirely yours. We can continue building the most prosperous galactic community in history, or we can test just how thoroughly we've all prepared for the alternative. The silence that followed was profound and heavy. The aliens were beginning to understand that they hadn't discovered a plot against them. They had discovered that humanity operated on a completely different level of strategic thinking than any species they had ever encountered. Council leader Zix 441 finally spoke, its voice barely above a whisper. You've been planning for every possible outcome since the day you arrived? Since before we arrived, Jake corrected gently. We've been planning since the day we received your first transmission. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. It's served our species well for millennia. The chamber remained silent as the full scope of human preparation became clear. The species that had seemed so cooperative and eager to please had just revealed themselves to be the most thoroughly prepared civilization any of them had ever encountered, and they were still offering cooperation. The ball, as Jake had made unmistakably clear, was now entirely in the council's court. The silence in the council chamber stretched for what felt like an eternity. The alien delegates sat frozen in their positions, processing the implications of what they had just learned. The humans they had welcomed as cooperative junior partners had just revealed themselves to be something far more complex and potentially dangerous. Council leader Zix 441 was the first to break the silence, its crystalline form flickering with patterns that Jake recognized as deep confusion mixed with fear. Ambassador Morrison, help us understand. You say you have plans for friendship and cooperation as well as for conflict. What exactly do these peaceful plans contain? Jake nodded, seeming almost relieved to move the conversation in this direction. I'm glad you asked. General Patterson, would you care to outline some of our cooperative development initiatives? General Patterson stepped forward, his military bearing softening slightly. For the past 3 years, we've been developing comprehensive plans for technological sharing that would advance every council civilization by centuries. We've identified key areas where human innovation could complement alien expertise. Dr. Lisa Carter activated a new holographic display that showed complex technical diagrams and development timelines. For the Etherians, we've designed energy manipulation techniques that could increase your computational power by orders of magnitude. For the Sporians, we've developed biological enhancement methods that could extend your collective consciousness across entire star systems. The chamber buzzed with surprised murmurs as the aliens began to understand that the human preparations extended far beyond military planning. For the Saurian Empire, General Patterson continued, we've created defensive technologies that would make your worlds virtually impregnable. For the hive minds, we've designed communication systems that could link your collective across galactic distances without signal degradation. Sarek leaned forward, his anger beginning to mix with curiosity. You developed all of this while simultaneously planning our potential conquest? We developed all of this because we were planning for every possibility, Jake replied. If you remained friendly partners, we wanted to ensure that partnership would be as beneficial as possible. For everyone involved? Lisa gestured to another section of the display. We've also mapped out trade relationships that would optimize resource distribution across the galaxy, economic partnerships that would eliminate scarcity for most essential materials, cultural exchange programs that would preserve the uniqueness of each civilization while fostering understanding. The Vortexian delegate's gaseous form swirled with bewilderment. But why keep these plans secret? Why not share these beneficial technologies immediately? Because, Jake said simply, we needed to be certain of your intentions first. Trust is earned, not given. We've been watching and learning, just as you've been watching and learning about us. General Patterson's expression grew more serious. The galaxy is a dangerous place. We've encountered 17 different civilizations during our expansion period. 12 of them tried to conquer or enslave us. 3 more attempted to exploit us economically. Only 2 proved to be genuinely peaceful. Your council represents the largest concentration of potentially friendly civilizations we've ever encountered, Lisa added. But we needed time to verify that your peaceful intentions were genuine and not just another form of manipulation. The Sporian delegate released a cloud of thoughtful yellow spores. So our 3-year integration period was actually an extended mutual evaluation? Exactly, Jake confirmed. You were testing our suitability for membership while we were testing your commitment to peaceful cooperation. The difference is that we came prepared for all possible outcomes. Council Leader Zix 441. Pulsed with what might have been understanding. And you've concluded that we are genuinely peaceful? The evidence suggests that the Council's commitment to cooperation is authentic, General Patterson replied. Your response to our military transparency was genuine, concern for proper integration rather than attempts to exploit perceived weakness. Your trade offers have been fair and mutually beneficial. Your cultural exchanges have shown real interest in understanding rather than domination. Jake stepped closer to the center of the chamber. Which brings us to the current moment. You've discovered our contingency plans for hostile scenarios. Now you have to decide how you want to proceed. The chamber erupted in rapid communication. As delegates conferred with their homeworlds and with each other, the clicking of hive minds, the swirling of vortexians, the pulsing of etherians, and the chemical releases of sporians created a cacophony of alien discussion. After several minutes, the communication died down and all attention returned to the humans in the center of the chamber. You say you're prepared for cooperation, the Crystalline Collective's representative chimed. But you're also prepared for war. How do we know which version of humanity we'll be dealing with? That depends entirely on which version of the Council we're dealing with, Jake replied without hesitation. If you choose to continue the path of peaceful cooperation, you'll find humans to be the most committed allies you've ever had. We'll share technologies, resources, and knowledge that will benefit everyone. And if we choose otherwise? Sarek asked, his reptilian features showing a mixture of anger and grudging respect. General Patterson's expression became completely neutral. Then you'll discover just how thoroughly we've prepared for that possibility? But I'd prefer not to discuss those details unless it becomes necessary. The Hivemind representative spoke in unison. You're asking us to trust you despite discovering that you've been planning our potential defeat for 3 years. We're asking you to recognize that trust based on strength is more reliable than trust based on weakness, Lisa replied. We've shown you that we're capable of being either your greatest allies or your most dangerous enemies. The choice of which we become is entirely yours. Council Leader Zix 441 rose from its position, its form brightening with what Jake hoped was determination rather than hostility. This is unprecedented in Council history. We need time to consider these revelations and their implications. Of course, Jake agreed. Take all the time you need. But I'd like you to consider one thing while you're deliberating. The chamber fell silent again as every delegate focused on the human ambassador. For 3 years, we've had the capability to implement our hostile contingency plans. We've had detailed intelligence on your weaknesses, access to your facilities, and people positioned throughout your civilizations. If conquest had been our primary goal, we would have acted by now. Jake's words carried through the chamber with quiet authority. Instead, we've spent those 3 years building relationships, sharing knowledge, and contributing to the prosperity of the Council. Our actions should tell you more about our true intentions than any plans ever could. General Patterson stepped forward one final time. Humanity doesn't want to rule the galaxy. We want to explore it, understand it, and help it prosper. But we've learned that good intentions aren't enough. You also need the capability to protect what you've built. We're offering you a choice, Lisa added. Partner with a species that's prepared for anything or face a species that's prepared for everything. Either way, we'll respect your decision. The humans turned and walked toward the chamber's exit, leaving the alien delegates to contemplate their decision. As they reached the doors, Jake paused and looked back. The contingency plans will remain in place regardless of your choice, he said quietly. That's just prudent planning. But the path we take from here is up to all of us. The doors closed behind them, leaving the Council to grapple with a decision that would shape the future of galactic civilization. They had discovered that their newest members were far more complex and capable than anyone had imagined. The question now was whether that discovery would lead to a golden age of cooperation or to the first galactic war in over a millennium. The choice, as Jake had made clear, was entirely theirs, but for the first time since first contact, they were making that choice with full knowledge of what humanity was truly capable of. The age of underestimating the cooperative humans was over. What came next would depend on whether the Council saw that capability as a threat to be eliminated or a strength to be embraced.